Good morning and welcome back to Miniature Monday here on Gaming with ADHD, where today we're going to be looking at the painted miniatures for G.I. Joe Mission Critical, a board game from Renegade Game Studios. Now, this did not require any assembly. This is not technically a miniatures game, but on Miniature Monday, when I finally complete a project, let's be honest, that's a whole separate story. I do like to at least give a review, talk about what it was like to actually paint the miniatures, and, overall just have a little bit of fun with, this part of the gaming hobby. So, before we get started, do make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I do try to put out a few different videos each week covering all sorts of tabletop gaming content, and I'd love for you to come along and see what we have to share. Now, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and switch over to our close-up camera and take a look at what we've got. Now, the first miniature that we've got is CoverGirl. She is actually the driver of the Wolverine missile tank, and in this particular section, I've actually included her with the 28mm role-playing game miniature because I want you to see the difference in the two scales. The miniatures for G.I. Joe Mission Critical come in two sizes. The characters are all 24mm, or not 24, they are all 44mm, and I'm getting distracted all of a sudden. They are 44mm for the character figures, and they are 38mm for the trooper figures. Now, I'm not going to be reviewing any of the trooper figures in this video. We're just going to look at the characters, and so I just wanted you to see that they are a little bit different. The role-playing miniatures come in at about 28 to 32mm. I don't know what they are exactly, but as you can see, they are significantly smaller. Now, I have a couple of issues with that. I was hoping to be able to use some of the miniatures across both role-playing and the board game, but it doesn't really work that way. For the board game, the miniatures are more along the lines of effectively tokens, but it's more fun to have a miniature than a piece of cardboard, so not really complaining there. Just wanted to point that out. But overall, this was a pretty easy one. She's a lot of browns, in her normal uniform. Before I get all of the probably plenty of comments, I do realize that CoverGirl is a blonde, and for some reason, I screwed it up twice because the CoverGirl role-playing miniature I did paint last year, and for some reason I still gave her red hair. I admit I am more of an amateur at painting, and so they have no eyes. I use a wash, hope that it gets into the recesses enough so that you can actually see a little bit of definition, but that's pretty much where I'm going to go for it. But overall, it was really easy, knocked her out pretty quick, and I still think she looks really good. I just used a strong tone wash from Army Painter, and basically that pulled out all of the details pretty much where I wanted it, and I think the miniature looks really good. I do go for more of a tabletop standard. I'm not trying to win any competitions, but regardless, I'm pretty happy with it. So that is CoverGirl. Now, continuing on, we've got Snake Eyes. Now, Snake Eyes is a longtime fan favorite of the series. He has been a character since literally wave one, when they couldn't even bend at the or twist at the elbows, I should say, as opposed to bend, because they could always do that. And then he was just a commando with a black mask on, so you didn't even know who he was. But as time went on, they've evolved him into a ninja, and my personal favorite was always the third version of the character, where it was dark black and lots of silver. I don't know why they went with that paint scheme, but I don't know. That's the one that always attaches to me. So when I get a Snake Eyes figure, that's usually how I end up painting him, is just, pick out a couple of pieces of silver and leave the rest of it black. I did basically put like a dry brush of a gray just to kind of pick out some of those details a little bit better. But overall, I was pretty happy with it. I think he does come out pretty well in that regard. A nice dark tone wash just to kind of, mute some of that dry brush. But otherwise, I think he looks great and happy to have him in the collection. This is one, actually, I did want to make sure I did point out. The sword is bent quite a bit. I was able to more or less successfully, like you can see here, it's still a little bit crooked. Using some hot and cold water, I was able to straighten it up a little bit. That is one downside that you will find with most board game miniatures. Typically, they are PVC as opposed to high impact polystyrene. And so they end up being a lot more flexible, but it doesn't mean that you can't get some good details, and it doesn't mean you can't, get the miniature to look really good and very playable. Again, I admit I am not a professional, so I am not going for contest type standards, but it's very, very playable, and it'll be fun to have out on the table. All right, next up we have another classic of the G.I. Joe series. This is Scarlet, here in more of a classified look. Classified is the current 6-inch figure line that is being produced. And I'll admit, I am not necessarily a big fan of her classified design. It looks good. I'm not really opposed to it. I was trying to keep the colors, while not exact, at least kind of close to what they put on the figure itself. And as a friend of mine pointed out, she does look like she was shot through a paint factory. She's got red, she's got blue, she's got green, she's got yellow. She's also got some brass metallic on there. So there's absolutely a lot going on with Scarlet. But overall, it was still a fun figure. She is now the second redhead in my collection, after goofing up with CoverGirl. But with this one, because it's a larger miniature, I did actually kind of stretch myself a little bit. I wanted to not just, normally I'll just go in and I'll paint eyebrows. That actually does a lot to pick up some definition, but I wanted a little bit more for her. So I mixed actually the hair color with some of the flesh tone that I was using, and put that on her lips, because Scarlet to me isn't really a bright lipstick kind of character. But I wanted to have a little bit more definition. So I was actually able to stretch a little bit, and I think it actually came out really well. Other than that, the colors, hitting them with some Army Painter Strong Tone, really muted them a little bit so that they weren't as bright as when I put them on. But overall, it still looks like Scarlet. Still not quite sure why she has so many colors in her palette, but overall, it was a good figure. So there's Scarlet. All right, next up we have Stalker. Now, Stalker was the only figure in the original run. So he is an actual wave 1 3 3/4 inch figure that wasn't solid green or black for G.I. Joe. All of the other characters were they were a single shade of green. They were all different shades actually, but they were still different shades. But Stalker was actually camouflaged. So I did want to represent that. They've got a weird design. It looks like he's wearing kind of a suit jacket, because it's actually got like a collar and everything, which is not really how military jackets are designed. So that was a little confusing. So I did leave his undershirt just a solid solid color instead of camouflage, because that's what you would normally see. And while I have done some more soft camouflages in the past, I opted to go for more of kind of a 1980s and 90s US woodland camouflage. I didn't add any brown or black to it, just some black for like the boots and the armor plates. But other than that, just kind of kept it to some greens. I, for lack of a better way to put it, I didn't want the green and the black on the uniform to kind of mute the flesh tones. I do not do, brown flesh tones very often. Just a bad habit of mine, but I do try to do them correctly when I see them. And so I think this actually came out really, really well. And keeping it to just the greens on the uniform actually does show it off a little bit better. One thing that I did try to do that was a little bit fun, in one of the pieces of art, his right hand, so this one, he was wearing a glove, but as sometimes you'll see with soldiers, they'll actually tear off the index finger, which is the trigger finger. And so I tried to actually just do that and just put some brown on his right hand trigger finger, just to kind of represent that. I actually thought that was kind of cool. He is a Green Beret, so he'd do cool things like that. But yeah, just a solid character, fun design. The running pose was nice as well, and I think it actually worked out great for this character. So overall, I'm really happy with how Stalker came out. All right, finally we've got Duke. Now, Duke is another one of those interesting characters. He's technically a Master Sergeant, or I believe a First Sergeant actually, but he's always been presented as the leader of the G.I. Joe team, which is odd when you consider there are officers and generals and all that kind of stuff. But he's the one that is always presented as the guy out in front, leading the rest of the Joes. This is his classified design, but I tried to kind of mix it up with his original design. The shirt, I actually ended up mixing some colors. I used a khaki, but then also some Vallejo Sunny flesh tone, which is more of a yellow. So that was, I don't know why it's considered a flesh tone. But I mixed about half and half, and I actually think it came out really well. On top of that, Duke is a blonde, and I have some blonde hair paint, which isn't very visible until I put some wash on it, and I actually think that brings it out very well. I am still horrible with eyes, so I have a bunch of these nice, large miniatures that have no eyes. I make no apologies for it. But I was also able to get some wash into his mouth, so that actually will help, give some definition to the face. Overall, it's a good-looking miniature. I think the armor plates on his shins and his knees, actually, I used some old bronze from Reaper, and I think it just sets off really well. But overall, it's a fun figure. Duke is one of my favorite characters, and I think I did him justice. So there's that. All right, next up, we have the first of our Cobra figures. So the core game does come with 5 G.I. Joe characters and 5 Cobra characters. And in this case, we've got Copperhead, the driver of the Cobra water moccasin. Now, I'll be honest, I have absolutely no idea why they included this character. Cobra has a nice, deep field of characters. And I don't know why they included this guy. There's no water-based Joe against him. There's no boats for the Cobra characters. So I don't know why he was included. In addition, he's also one of the old art style. This is almost it's not entirely, but it's almost a perfect representation of what Copperhead looked like in his original figure. He's got kind of this neon blue and neon green color scheme. I have no idea why, but overall, it's funny. I actually was surprised that I even had the paints to pull it off, but I think it worked. I don't like again. I still don't understand why he's there. He's not necessarily a character that I'm a big fan of. I did give him eyebrows that you can see under his helmet, but he's got no eyes. But overall, it was fun to paint. A little stressful getting the neon green from Army Painter to actually, sit properly. I had to do a few layers on it, but overall it was fine. So that's Copperhead. All right, next up we've got Major Sebastian Blood, the Mercenary. This is I always thought this character was strange. When the original action figure came out, his right arm being some sort of cybernetic deal was a single piece, no elbow, no nothing. It was just strange. It was a weird character, but he's again one of those that's been around from the very, very early days. I think he came out in like wave 3 of the original GI Joes, but he's a mercenary for hire, but fiercely loyal to Cobra. But I don't, whatever. It's fine. Very simple paint job, browns, blacks. I painted the chest piece and the arm and his gun a blackened steel from Reaper that I like. And overall, it came out really well. I used a little bit of shining silver because he does have a collection of dog tags, so you can see that on his chest right under his throat. But overall, it was fun. He's also got the big, villain type mustache, and it's interesting that I've found these larger models both easier to paint, but then you also have to be careful because there's a lot more detail. So there's a lot of things that you don't want to miss because they'll just not look right if you ignore them. The smaller miniatures, it's very, very easy to ignore some things that you don't want to deal with. So, but other than that, definition comes out just fine. All right, now we have what I have dubbed the most confident man in the G.I. Joe lore. Not only is he willing to go out without a shirt, he's also wearing purple pants at the same time. He doesn't care what you think. This is Dr. Mindbender. I've never understood the design for this character. Not only does he not have a shirt, he's got metal suspenders holding on to his cloak. Because yes, on top of no shirt and purple pants, he's got a cloak that's held up by silver suspenders. I don't know what's going on with this character. He does have eyebrows. He does have a mustache. The one thing I couldn't figure out to do, so I just ignored it. He's got a monocle under on his right eye. I didn't know how to paint that, and it doesn't really show up on the sculpt, so I couldn't really paint, maybe I could go back in with a little bit of silver paint and try to, I don't know. It's just, this character is a little ridiculous, but also I think he looks absolutely awesome. The colors, I think, came out just right. It does justice to the character, and again, if he doesn't care, I don't care. So that is Dr. Mindbender, looking amazing. All right, second to last figure, we've got the Baroness, the G.I. Joe equivalent of Scarlet. The number of hearts that she broke, can't even count. But this was fun. This actually stretched me a little bit because of the glasses. The hair and the uniform, I realize they all kind of blend in, but you know what? They did in the action figure as well, because she's got a black skin-tight suit and black hair and black glasses, but she had the bright red lipstick. Now, I actually muted it a little bit. I didn't just use a straight red. I forget what I used to mute it, but regardless, it does come through. She still looks stern and mean like she always did. And as I'm watching her little turnaround, I forgot to paint her dagger. So that's, I mean, just obviously a nice silver would work well there, and I didn't do it. So back to the drawing board after I've recorded the video, because I'm not going to edit that. But regardless, it was a fun model to do. The Cobra on her chest, I do think came out really well. It's very, very soft, so if you are going to paint it, it's going to be like you're either going to have to get a magnifier to go in and make sure you hit the points right, or you can do what I did, and when I hit it with a dark tone wash, it settled into some of the cracks, and the kind of stripes of the Cobra's hood actually showed up. So do keep that in mind. The Cobra symbols have been a little bit difficult to work with, but they also haven't been as prevalent as I was expecting. So overall, a lot of fun, and this is the Baroness. All right, and finally, because you were all wondering where this figure was, we get to Cobra Commander. I decided to go from what I consider, lowest ranked character to highest ranked character of both Joe and Cobra, and this is my entry for him. Now this was interesting because I actually switched to a completely brand new line of paints. I used literally just the basic colors from Monument Hobbies from the Pro Acryl line. I got the basic set for their paints, and that's all I used to paint this guy. Let me correct. The basic set and the metallic set. And that's it. And overall, I think he came out really well. There's been two versions of... Well, actually, I think there have been about 3 or 4, but there were 2 early versions of the Cobra Commander figure from Classified. One with a light blue, one with a dark blue. And this ended up kind of splitting the difference. And I actually really like how it came out. The dark blue had some black patches, which I used the Pro Acryl gray on it. And I actually think it came out... I mean, it's not exact, but I think it came out well. For the gold on the sword, I do wish it was a little bit darker, but it's fine. I still like how it came out. The silver worked really well. Overall, I was actually really, really happy with this paint. It went on easy. I didn't have to use a lot of coats to get it to look right. And let's be honest, it's Cobra Commander. If you're an 80s kid like me, he's right up there with Darth Vader. And I loved painting this figure. It was a lot of fun. Overall, I enjoyed painting the entire line. So what are my final thoughts? I mean, from a miniatures perspective, these are going to be really difficult to use because of the fact that they are larger figures. They're not like, you can't get, number one, the trooper figures are not at the same scale. They are not sized for other role-playing game miniatures. They actually released a separate line of role-playing game miniatures. There's a lot of issues if you just want it for the miniatures. But everything I've heard is that the game is really good as well. So it is also going to be fun to be able to have an upgraded game where my miniatures all look cool as well, instead of just green and gray plastic. Overall, it's a lot of fun. If you're just looking for the miniatures, it's going to be a bit expensive because the game does retail for about $100. And then the miniature, like the expansion packs, retail for about $45. So basically, you're looking at about $9 a piece for these miniatures, and they are board game quality. So I'm not necessarily going to be yelling at you to run out and buy these right now if you're a fan of G.I. Joe. But if you want a cool board game if you don't mind board game miniatures, they're not too bad. They are a little bit more on the expensive side, but I don't regret it. And if you shop around right, you may be able to get a deal on them as well. So keep that in mind. But overall, I had a lot of fun. I'll do some more reviews as I get the expansion packs painted up. But other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because, like I said, I do try to put out a few videos each week covering all of these topics. But otherwise, I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.